hear this? You are not alone. This is the Resistance.
Unless they weren't more technologically advanced, at which point that wouldn't even be feasible, because how would they have traveled here from another universe?
Here's the theory. Maybe they're not alien beings from another world. Maybe they're other race that existed here before humankind and lived underground when humans came along. Maybe there's a part of history that maybe we don't know about, that maybe we kicked the living shit out of them back in the day, and now that technology has advanced so far, they're trying to take their world back, possibly.
But how is that even possible? Because the furthest, date back that you can go back to, even then we don't have any kind of weapons that could have taken over an alien race, no matter whether they were indigenous or not.
Well, maybe they weren't that smart as to create.
So the Egyptians took them over with spears and bows and arrows?
Well, if they were a semi-intelligent race, maybe they evolved with us or something, and one race dominated the other.
No, I get that.
And maybe perhaps we ourselves are the Anunnaki. If you want to really get mind fuck on that, if the ancient aliens of old are the Anunnaki, which were giant humanoids, and as we've already discussed, people were substantially shorter back then. Maybe you bring in the Skynet aspect of it, and it's time travel. Human beings from our time, or maybe even in a distant time, who are substantially taller, go back and help human civilization evolve, and maybe even fight this other race that is also occupying the world.
But
one
still,
species dominating the other.
Yeah, but still, even so, if they're technologically more advanced in the future, and they're sending people back in time that are not as technologically advanced, they would still be using their weaponry and their stuff, their knowledge of technology and history to overthrow us and rule us, rather than
I'm talking
manipulate.
about human beings traveling back through time. And perhaps it's something like in Terminator. You go through naked. You don't bring anything back with you. But you have your knowledge. Look at Army of Darkness. Ash went back in time to medieval times. Taught them how to make explosives, all kinds of shit. Maybe it was something similar with the Egyptians. Maybe human beings traveled back through time, helped cultures like the Egyptians, the Mayans, the Aztecs, and maybe there was, in fact, possibly a war between
there is
the future human beings, the quote Anunnaki, and the quote rays and reptiloids.
There is
one
evidence
species dominating the other for domination.
There is evidence that points to the Egyptian civilization having knowledge of how to make batteries. The batteries, of course, were gallon-sized containers containing citrus liquid and two bimetal products inside that create the saline solution that creates
fusion reaction.
No, not fusion.
Not cold fusion, but a type of fusion.
No, we're talking about generating electricity. I'm talking about batteries, dude. Like batteries that go inside this kind of thing. Batteries that power your remote controls. Only the batteries aren't as compact. They're actually big, huge clay pots.
Are you heading towards the crystal theory?
No. I'm just saying.
Crystals as a power source?
No, where they used. Dude, this isn't a theory. This is actual tangible evidence. Dude, they found pots that are sealed with tar, which they had access to. These metal products and these saline solutions, lemon juice and salt water and whatnot that conduct electricity. And when the two metals, meet inside that saline solution or whatever they had in there, actually creates an electrical charge coming out of the top of it, like the positive and negative portions of a battery. And basically they used to use these as, in theory, they used to use these batteries as a way to feel God's presence. Basically, they would take these batteries and they would hide them in these big sarcophaguses, and then they would...
The worship of technology.
Well, think of Indiana Jones and the
Crystal Skull.
No, not the Crystal Skull. The Raiders of the Lost Ark, where they had this big gold chest that you open
The
it
Ark
up.
of the Covenant.
Yeah, the Ark of the Covenant. So basically, they had a sarcophagus kind of like that, and basically they had these batteries inside this thing, and they were connected to this metal. And when you touch the metal, you get a little bit of a charge, and even just something so small and significant as 0.001 volts, you could feel that in your skin, and that could be like sensing.
So the
God's
Ark of the
presence.
Covenant was electrified, and when they talk about it in the Old Testament,
Not
don't
just
touch the Ark of the Covenant. You know, they had to use wood planks to transport that thing around, and if somebody touched it, God would strike them down. So basically, they touched it, and they were lightning.
I'm not saying necessarily the Ark of the Covenant. I'm just saying in general terms. Back in the day, the Egyptians had power sources like batteries that they used to sense God's presence. And that being said, I'm talking about the technology, and you're talking about time travel and these aliens coming back to advance our technology ahead of its time. And basically, what I'm saying is that the theory behind that, we don't know who came up with this and why these batteries, this electrical power source, wasn't utilized more or looked into more through the Egyptians, because it was like a lost thing, you know what I mean? Like somebody fucking invented it, just never pursued it, or whatever. I mean, they found these things inside of the pyramids, inside of archaeological digs in Egypt, and these batteries were in theory used to sense God's presence, even just a little shock. Like, how you get those hand buzzers and shake somebody's hands, it's a funny fucking gag gift, but in real terms, if you had one of those and you shook somebody's hand in Egyptian times, they would think you were all powerful and mighty and had some kind of power. And that's kind of what they
burn you as a witch.
Right, and that's what they were trying to get at back in those days, I'm sure, with the batteries.
That is possible, and perhaps
or they used it for electroplating, taking one metal and covering another metal with the product of that metal onto another metal.
Well,
copper.
There's no doubt that these cultures weren't extremely advanced. I mean, the pyramids themselves, like even scientists and even construction professionals today can't figure out how the fuck they did that, how they created the pyramids, or the
thousands and thousands of years
temple,
of slavery, brother.
Or the temples in South America, Mayan temples, the Incas, Aztecs, all that. Hell, even the theory of Atlantis, that could go back. In fact, the theory of Atlantis could go back to what you were talking about with the battery things. Why didn't they look into that further? Maybe Atlantis, if it did exist, looked into that and they blew themselves off the face of the map. And so human beings, being as primitive as they were, got scared and said, "Hey, we don't want to fuck with this."
That could be a theory. Yeah,
that is an entirely plausible theory. Or even, going back to the war with the aliens and shit, perhaps that played a factor as well as to why we didn't technologically progress. As the Bible says, God bitch-slapped the Egyptians when Pharaoh wouldn't release the slaves, or when God flooded the earth because they were too sinful. Which, that's another thing I kind of take issue with. God hadn't even established His laws with the people yet, and yet they are sinning. It's funny to me. But I digress.
Well, Moses had the Ten Commandments.
Yeah, but
at that point,
the Great Flood happened pre-Moses. That happened in Genesis, and you didn't get the Ten Commandments until Exodus.
Good point.
Yeah. So, and then you have the Tower of Babel when
but
they tried to build that tower as a bridge to reach God.
Okay, are you talking?
And God smote them and confounded their languages.
Wait a minute.
Because society joined together, human beings joined together, and God said, "Oh fuck! Look what these people can do when they work together. I gotta confound them. So I'm gonna confound their languages to kind of keep things in check, keep things from progressing too far, too fast. And if that were an alien race, that's there's relatively interesting. There's so many theories, like the MK Ultra thing, or even just something as minute as alien abduction and probing and all that shit, which is something I really don't get. If there was if aliens
they were sent here to stick shit up our asses, really?
You fucking perverts!